Hello, new school comic books. Okay, well, let's just jump into it here. The first comic book I have is Earth 2. Basically, the premise of Earth 2, for anybody who doesn't know, is Earth 2 is set in kind of a parallel world in the DC universe. And this is a world where Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman have died protecting the Earth from Darkseid and his minions, and so now newer superheroes have to come and fill that void, and the newer heroes are basically revamps and reinterpretations of some of the older DC characters. This particular issue actually doesn't have any of the good guys in it. It mostly focuses on a bad guy named Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is one of Darkseid's uh, minions or what have you that got left behind on Earth, and he has decided to make the best of it and try to conquer and take over and do his thing. And we also get introduced to his second in command, a young lady named Fury. It's a pretty fun issue. It's quick paced, it's action packed. We see how Steppenwolf is, on one hand, he's a badass physically, but we also see how he's a smart guy. He's a planner, he's a schemer, he's a manipulator. He sees the big picture, he has long range goals and things like that. So I think Steppenwolf may be a pretty interesting, big bad for for the future. We also get to meet Fury here, who is this world's in this world is the daughter of Wonder Woman, and we don't get a whole lot on her backstory. It's basically just said that somehow he came across her when she was very young and kind of brought her into his little circle or whatever. But we have some cool action scenes, lots of battles. Like I said, really quick pace. But it all works. I know other people have remarked about this, and I feel the same way. This comic almost feels like a Bronze Age comic. It almost feels like something that would have come out like in maybe early 80s or whatever. Where on one hand, you do get the drama, you do get the explanations, you do get the more complex heroes and villains and things, but you also get a lot of action too. It doesn't seem, on one hand, it's still modern day comic book storytelling, but you don't have the same level of decompression that you get in some things. And I think it works. I think it works to this comic's advantage, and I have a lot of fun reading it. Next, I have All New X-Men #6, written by Brian Michael Bendis. Art is by David Marquez, and coloring, I should mention, is by Marty Garcia. This is a comic book that surprised me as well, because at first I was a little bit skeptical, because Brian Michael Bendis has done some teamwork that I really wasn't that into. I much preferred the solo stuff that he did. But yeah, this is it's a neat comic book. It's pretty decent. Basically, the premise is the Silver Age X-Men, that is the first class, when they were teenagers, get pulled into the present, and the idea being that somehow they'll be able to stop present day Scott Summers, Cyclops, who, if you've been following what's been going on in the X-Men comics or the Marvel Universe, has kind of gone rogue. He's kind of gone renegade. So the idea is they've come from the past to the present to kind of stop, old Scott or present day Scott. And yeah, in this particular issue, we get to see teenage Jean Grey and teenage Cyclops kind of we get to see them how they deal with and kind of don't deal with the present world that they're in now. Everything's changed. The world's a lot grimmer and darker. All their friends have gone through all kinds of changes and transformations and things, and they're just really not sure what to make of anything. But hey, this comic worked for me. It's quick. Well, it's not that quick, but it's a slower pace, but it's done well. Let's see here. There's some nitpick things I have with this. One thing that I know I've seen on the internet, and other websites and forums and things that I kind of agree with to an extent is in this comic they're hammering home the whole thing of people not trusting teenage Scott, and I think that that point's being hammered a little bit too much just because teenage Scott hasn't done anything wrong. Why would people automatically not trust him anymore? You know, there's even a line of dialogue where, well, Storm says, "Well, Gene, you know, you might have to lead a team because people aren't going to trust Scott." Well, why wouldn't they trust Scott? This is the innocent Scott. This is Boy Scout Scott, you know. This is the guy who tries to do the right thing no matter what, you know what I mean? And Scott even says it himself. Why is everybody looking at me? But you know, that's one thing. That's one thing. Oh, another thing though, and I have to spoil this part. It won't wreck the story for you, but there's a part where teenage Scott goes into like a convenience store, and he's looking around. And he's all like, you know, why is all this? Why are you selling water in bottles? Did something happen to the water supply or something? And you know, it's kind of a funny joke, you know, that okay, he's in the present, and he doesn't understand, you know, bottled water. Here's what the problem with that is. Um, the original stories, the original X-Men stories from the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby days were done back in the 60s, right? And okay, fine. But comic book characters don't age the same way that real people age, of course, you know. If Peter Parker was a real person, he would be pushing 60, right? But of course he's not. He's still in his early 20s. And the way that the sliding timeline in Marvel Comics works is whatever year it is in real life, only 10 years have passed since Fantastic Four #1. Okay, so these are the original X-Men, and they're being pulled from the Stan and Jack days. So those stories happened roughly 10 years ago. 10 years ago in our time would have been, you know, 2001, 2002, and like that. So Scott really shouldn't be confused about bottled water. I mean, in real life, bottled water's been around at least 30 years, you know what I mean? So I think that was a mistake there that I think the editors should have caught, you know. It's kind of a funny gag until you think about how the Marvel Universe works and stuff. But that's okay. Oh, I really did like the art. I was a big fan of what Stuart Immerman did in the first 5 issues. But here, David Marquez, you know, really picks up the ball and really runs with it. The art is crisp, it's clean, lots of clean lines. Um, Really easy to understand and everything. So I really enjoyed it. You know, I hope he sticks around for a while. Let's see here. What's the next comic? The next comic I have is New Avengers #2, written by Jonathan Hickman, penciling by Steve Epting, and the inking is by Steve Epting and Rick Magnar. I apologize if I say his name wrong. Really, what this comic book is, it's really the new Illuminati, but calling it Avengers, I'm sure, helps the sales. Basically, the premise behind this comic is the Illuminati are this kind of loose group of various leaders of the superhuman community who get together and kind of plan things and set agendas and deal with threats uh, without the knowledge of their teams and other people in the superhero community. So they make these kind of, you know, backroom deals and things like that, you know, that nobody else knows about. Um, but okay, this comic is actually pretty good. It's really well crafted, well paced, well crafted. I like the dialogue. I really like the art here. Basically, in this issue, we get a little bit more on what's going on with the Black Swan and what she was up to. Basically, we find out that the big threat is going to be one of these sort of the universes and the parallel worlds are collapsing and colliding on each other, and you know the guys have to figure out what to do about it. The Illuminati is basically Mr. Fantastic, Namor, Doctor Strange, Tony Stark, Iron Man, T'Challa in this case, Captain America and Black Bolt from the Inhumans. And I thought what really worked well was, the conversations, the dialogues, the way the characters' personalities played off of each other. I like the explanation of the threat, and it just did a really good job of setting up what's going to, what the threat, what the crisis is going to be. I kind of wish we had a little bit more of this in the first issue, but I think this issue makes up for the kind of lack of explanation there. So, really good. This was actually basically my favorite new comic of the week. And let's see here. And I guess that's basically it. For some stupid reason, I bought a second issue of Aquaman 13. I actually literally forgot that I already have this comic book. And I also bought Black Kiss number 6. Yeah, to tell you the truth, I'm actually pretty disappointed in it. I expect a lot better out of Howard Chaykin. But that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Leave whatever comments you want. Thanks again, and everybody have a good day.